What is up, Packers fans, and welcome back to another episode of PRTV. Those of you that were with us for the daily draft can see all around you. This is the home, if you will, studio here in Fargo. You can see the Bison Report sign over my right shoulder. Bobblehead Christian's here, the Cannabrewski from Badger State. But the Packers flag's in the back, which means this is an episode of Packer Report TV. Might be a new studio coming. I'm just telling you, we're working on stuff. We're going to kind of work our way into some higher level things. What I mean by that is I'm no longer at camp. Andy's got you covered with big, long episodes from every practice at camp. But I'd like to go through some of the thoughts that I've had since we closed down the daily draft. I've got a list of some stuff I want to get through. But today I am so very, very excited to bring on Maddy Hudak to talk some Michael Pratt. And Maddy, I'd like to just have you explain to our audience why. Look, anybody who follows me, I told you just take a quick breeze through the timeline. Like Michael's sort of almost become a meme to me. We'll get into why it's not a joke. It's not. But explain why, if I wanted to talk about Michael Pratt, and I got roped in here because you wrote something very awesome. You worked with our great PR team over at the Packers and we're able to get kind of some of this access and stuff. But explain your Michael Pratt credentials.
Yeah, so I've been Tulane sideline reporter since the 2021 season, which is when they went 2-10. We were evacuated for Hurricane Ida throughout that time. So I was actually with the team the entire time in Birmingham and really got a chance to see up close kind of the adversity that they went through on and off the field. And then they went through the greatest single season turnaround. I was in Arlington for that as well. And then watched his final season just now. And I've just recently launched Tulane on Sports Illustrated. And so that's where I had the chance to cover him as a Green Bay Packers rookie.
Yeah, and we're, I shouldn't say we, because not everybody agrees, although number 2 quarterback Sean Clifford has certainly struggled. I was so excited, and I want to get kind of your take, because maybe you've had a chance to talk to Michael or people around. I know I had a 3rd-round grade on Michael Pratt. This is great podcasting now, as I'm bringing up the consensus big board as opposed to having it ready, which is what a real professional would have done. But, I know with me having Michael as a 3rd-round guy, I don't know that was necessarily that far out of the realm. I think others maybe were closer to the, like, I'm looking at the one from NFL Mock Draft Database right now, searching for his name, 119. So that'd be at the tail end of round 4. I was closer to the 80s. I'd have to look at Arif Hassan's board and log back into wide left, but 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, whatever you want to call it. Some people, like, there was the 5 that went, right? The big 5, Caleb, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, then JJ McCarthy was going to go, and then Michael Penix was going to go. And I think there's at least a discussion about Spencer Rattler versus Michael Pratt or whomever. I think that it ended up being Spence. I like Michael more than I like Spence. The $1 million question, though, has to be what happened. Why did Michael Pratt fall like that? It has nothing to do with how good the rest of his career is going to be, right? That doesn't matter. But I think he'd like to know. I think Tulane fans would like to know. I certainly, as somebody who thought he should have been the next quarterback after that group that got drafted so high, have you gotten a decent grasp on what in the world happened there?
Not really. And I don't frankly know if we're ever really going to get one. The way that I really looked at it with the way that the draft went is I think that the conversation that you're having about Spencer Rattler versus Michael Pratt, I think that's pretty on the money. I just tend to kind of err on the fact that some teams, their scouts, are they really assessing, what the level of competition is? Are they really going out and, kind of getting past those G5 biases? Because that's something that I think might have come into play here. I think the fact that all of those quarterbacks went so early in round 1, it really showed a lot of teams' hands. And so teams that might have been sort of assessing when the next quarterback would go off the board, maybe making that type of move, it suddenly became very barren. And so to me, I think Spencer Rattler kind of just broke a drought because I would have kind of saw him in round 4 or round 5. And then it just got really weird after the fact. I really don't have a great answer for it other than I think that the draft is a very intriguing process of all these human decisions, and especially at quarterback. don't want to necessarily make this comparison, but it's hard to get away from the Brock Purdy one where he comes in, he's a 4-year starter. He knows how to operate and is just such a leader in that aspect. And what I think is an absolute steal in the 7th round and something that's super rare in that round, really to me, round 5 and later is real team fit and intent. And as it was kind of winding down in the draft, Michael Pratt was definitely getting towards the point of he would be a lot better off kind of testing undrafted free agency. And I think the Packers are just the one exception in the approach that they actually take to developing those late round quarterbacks. So when they say that they got a steal in him, I really tend to believe them.
I totally agree. One rumor, or not rumor, but one, I think, common misconception about Pratt, Joe Milton's 24 years old, Spencer's 23, Jordan Travis, 24. The COVID-19 pandemic, NIL opportunities where, hey, if you're the school's starting quarterback, maybe the local car dealership wants to kick you a car. Maybe you're making 100, 150, 200, 250 grand, even at a G5 school just by being the man. I think people thought maybe Michael Pratt was old because a lot of these other QBs that were sort of the face of the franchise, and you know this way more than I do, that Michael Pratt absolutely is the face of the franchise at Tulane, but he's 22. Like he played a ton, but he played early. He's not one of these like, oh, well, of course he's good. He's 24. He's been there for 6 years. That was just not the case.
Yeah, no, that's a really weird thing for me because you could just quite plainly look it up and see that he's not old. And like you said, I mean, as a true freshman, week 3 of that COVID year, that was the year that he was a freshman. He gets thrown in off the bench against Southern Miss and becomes a starter for there on out. And then the next 3 seasons were him finishing out his college degree. But, those 4 seasons, even though he had an extra COVID year, there was a question of whether or not he was going to go out after the Cotton Bowl year and go into the draft. Who's to say if it would have gone any differently at that point? But any kind of criticisms like that, what I said before, where I think that a lot of teams struggle to evaluate quarterbacks, that being the discourse here and it just being incorrect, kind of goes to show that I think a lot of us just don't really know what we're talking about, because I would have rated Spencer Rattler probably higher than the 5th round. I would have rated some of those quarterbacks in the 1st round probably a little lower than they went. And so to me, quarterback is so wonky. And to me, it's there was actually a lot of luck in the fact that, like I said before, Michael Pratt actually landed somewhere with a real shot at competing at minimum for the backup role. Yeah,
there's 220 million reasons why that starter role is potentially not available, not in the way that it ended up being for Brock Purdy. But I liked him, man. I think, look, I get it. He's not 6'4", he's not 230. He can't throw it through a brick wall. Like, I understand all those things. When he stands up there next to although Caleb Williams is kind of small too, but like he's not he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, all those things. But boy, when you take a program like Tulane to the heights that he took them, when you take care of the ball the way that he did, and really when it was time to win, I thought he was a really, really good football player. I want to get into your piece for Tulane Green Wave on SI. I do. But just kind of your favorite memories, I guess, of his time. I have connections to Kansas State University, so he broke the hearts of the people there in Manhattan. I'm coming back for the return, by the way. I'll be down in New Orleans, but we like, and then of course beating Caleb Williams and USC. So many different accomplishments, but like I said, chances to put games away and chances to come from behind. I thought he was that dude.
100%. And again, with the height and the weight thing, it just confuses me because when I think of someone that was great, like Drew Brees, yeah, he was a lot on the shorter side, but Mike Pratt was 6'2.5", 6'3", and big enough. And he's tough. He's willing to throw when he is about to get clobbered. And that's really not something that you can teach. I've always kind of said he reminds me a lot of Dan Campbell as a coach, as a player. Sometimes you would have liked him to slide out of bounds. One of my favorite memories was unfortunately on TV, the first game of that year in the 2-10 season. I was evacuated to Florida. And so I was just watching the game on TV, but that was just to me the biggest single game display of toughness I've really seen in a long time. But just watching him lead that team throughout that season and not give up. And I remember they came out in week 11 after an overtime loss, might have been double overtime. It was homecoming and it was just very defeating at that point. And they scored like 40 something points and got their second win of the year. And I thought that really said a lot about his leadership. But I could essentially pick so many games from that Cotton Bowl season. You brought up the Kansas State game, just watching him really take that over with his legs at the end and just the way that they went for it at the end of the game. But that final stretch against, really, I'd say SMU too, but Cincinnati, where he had to get it done in those final 2 drives and he threw touchdown passes on both of them. Probably the best game as a quarterback I've seen was the championship game. And for a guy that completed 3 passes prior, took 2 sacks on the final drives, had to complete 2 fourth down throws, one was with his legs, but we didn't have either starting tight end at that point, and I don't think they entered the game either. So we were missing a ton from a blocking perspective. And then Deuce Watts, who was our top target at wide receiver, got knocked out for a considerably long time. So when Michael Pratt was out there, he was throwing to 3rd and 4th string tight ends at that point. Still managed to lead us down to what was truly an unbelievable Cotton Bowl comeback. That really has to be my favorite memory for sure.
I love watching Deuce Watts. Love it. Yes. I very much enjoyed all of that. And Tyjae Spears, the tailback from when Pratt was younger. Yeah, a lot of fun. You mentioned undrafted free agency, and I totally agree with you. I think from the player perspective, you get to round 6, you get to round 7, and agents are just about, and I know not getting drafted is a disappointment. There's no question about that. But agents are starting to call around. Really, they have a great grasp of depth charts at the quarterback position. You're specifically looking for like, okay, I see this club here. They're not very strong at the number 2 QB. Most teams are only keeping 2. Where can I go where I think I have a real shot at beating out this backup? But as you mentioned in the piece, that wasn't the case. He got drafted, frankly, got drafted to a team that took a rookie backup last year who looked pretty decent in the preseason. Now, Sean Clifford, I'll tell you 2 things. Number 1, Sean Clifford has not looked great this training camp. It has been a struggle. And number 2, he is what we were talking about earlier. Sean Clifford, old as hell. He is like, he's 25 now. I think he might even turn 26 during his second season. That he was the like COVID face of the program. I'm sure a Penn State booster took care of him to come back for his 6th year. I'm not necessarily dumping on Sean, but what did, kind of Mike, and folks, you need to go check out, if you just go right to Maddy's Twitter, I think it might even still be her pinned story. Go check out Tulane Green Wave on SI. You can read this Michael Pratt story. But when you had a chance to talk to Michael, what did he talk? I mean, certainly about his experiences with Jordan Love and then his experiences with Sean, and just sort of Green Bay's approach to, no, we'll take you on as a 3rd QB and we're going to allow you to kind of give this a shot.
Well, just kind of crazy timing about that. I just kind of had the idea to start reaching out to former Tulane players and kind of get that started with the launch of Sports Illustrated. And so I had reached out to the Packers PR over the weekend prior to the Jordan Love contract holdout. So it was kind of just going to be, an exploratory piece, if you will. And then suddenly that became a much more interesting situation with Jordan Love sitting out and Michael Pratt getting that opportunity for those first team reps. And that's what really stuck out in our conversation is he seemed so comfortable and confident and so settled into where he is, and where I think a lot of quarterbacks might be daunted by the fact that, they were taken in the 7th round and the path might not be there for them. To me, you still are ultimately a draft pick versus signing with a team that had 7 opportunities to draft you, or, more or less, but decided to skip over it all those times. And so you could tell that that's settled in. But outside those quarterbacks are in the top, really those top couple quarterbacks in round 1, no rookie quarterbacks are really getting an opportunity in their first week of training camp to get first team reps in any type, like the way that Michael Pratt got as a result of that holdout. Even though it was a limited opportunity, I think he takes that really seriously. The fact that, he is really described their room as just being very cohesive, and them against, the division, against the other teams, not against one another. And so I think just that responsibility of having to step up for the Packers, but it was just such a rare opportunity for him to really show that, there's really no moment that he's he's never really scared of the moment, or it's not too big for him. That's what I've seen throughout his career. And I think he really just took advantage of that opportunity to soak it all up.
In such an interesting thing too, it's been described as a hold in, not a holdout, because I was there at practice. Like Jordan Love was there. Jordan Love was there in sweats, and not, Jordan has 1 year as a starter under his belt, but he has 4 years within the system, right? So him kind of being able to, it's not the same as being under like the Aaron Rodgers learning tree, but him being able to kind of be a part of all that. And yeah, right. I mean, what an interesting position to be put in where, hey, you're definitely not going to start, but you're in this battle for the number 2 job, and the starter can't practice until we get his deal straight. You mentioned his ability to run. We're going to kind of wrap things up here. Love to have you on maybe later on in the season. Although hopefully Michael Pratt isn't playing, something bad probably happened if that's the case. But maybe even to check in after preseason, after everything kind of happened. Speaking of preseason, that's going to be, my moment to be able to watch him actually play. I would guess they're probably not going to get a ton out of Jordan and really bring this Sean Clifford versus Michael Pratt competition into games against folks with other jerseys on. Maybe not their starters, but still games against folks with other jerseys on. What can Packers fans expect on the football field from Michael Pratt?
He will leave every part of him on the field. And I think it is really good to mention too that, it's not a throwaway that he was splitting first team reps all week. I'm not there. I'm not covering practice, but there's really no point in just doing that for camaraderie's sake. You're trying to win games. And so I really do think that they view him as a chance to kind of surpass that backup role. And I think if Michael Pratt sees a lane and an opportunity, just the adversity I've seen him take on and off the field at Tulane, from a hurricane to leading that single season turnaround, all of that is going to come out in the preseason. The chip on his shoulder of probably also agreeing that he should have gone a lot earlier than what he did in the draft. I think that's all going to be on him and really take advantage of that shot. And so I think that you're really going to see every down by him. He'll really kind of play like his last, but he did look a lot more nimble. I saw some clips of him with a little bit of play action there. It looks like he's in really good health and really good shape at that, with really improved footwork. He told me some good stuff about his accuracy. So looking forward to seeing if that all kind of slowed down for him.
Yeah, I'm very excited to watch. I mean, it seems like this is such an anti-Sean Clifford podcast, but I just
don't know him, I know Michael.
But Pratt, I have Michael Pratt and Sean Clifford also like in just completely different buckets as prospects too. I had, and part of it was the age, but I mean, I just had so much. I thought Michael was so much more exciting, and I'm definitely more excited to kind of see what he can do in the preseason games. Maddy, one more time, I'm going to give you the full opportunity to kind of strut your stuff. Where can we find your work, and where can Packers fans kind of go looking for more Michael Pratt content from you?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it nowadays, at Maddy Hudak _94. We recently launched Tulane Green Wave on Sports Illustrated, which is where that piece is. It's pinned on my profile. And the last thing I'll say about Michael Pratt is, as much as I've talked about his traits on the field, he's just as good of a person and has such a good character. He's really such a good leader. And I think you can really see that come out in that piece just as much.
All right, Maddy, thank you so much. Thank all you guys for watching. Do everything you're supposed to do. Like, click the bell, get the notifications, subscribe right here to the Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube network. And if you're listening on the podcast audio side, we appreciate you as well. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and go Pack Go.